Good morning and welcome to 365 Days of Stories with Theo Mayer, and we're on day 173, continuing stories from 1001 Arabian Nights. Remember that the third calendar finished telling his story about how he had lost his right eye, and afterwards, Zobeida suggested that all three of the calendars go their way, but they asked to stay to hear the story of the other three men that were there. Hassan al-Rashid, his head vizier, Jafar, and his head eunuch, Masur. And so Zobeida then turned to those three men and asked their story. Now, Jafar stepped forward and he told Zobeida that they were merchants from a town close by, a town called Masul, and they had come to Baghdad to do their trading, and they had finished with all this and were staying at an inn that was set up for merchants. And one of the merchants that lived in Baghdad had thrown a party for all of the merchants that he knew, and all came. And it was quite a wonderful celebration with beautiful food and wine. And at some point during the party, as often happens when people decide to drink such things as wine, there was an argument that took place, and yelling and shouting. And when this happened, the police were called and raided this merchant's home where the party was going on. And many of the men were arrested and taken away. And many of the other merchants fled, trying to seek their safety. Well, the three of them had run away from that party and had begun to wander through the streets, but they were fearful that the police would find them as well and treat them, well, in not the best of ways. And so when they had heard the music coming from Zobeida's home, they thought certainly there is a party and a celebration going on there, and certainly we should be able to add to it with our own company, increasing it, and at the same time fulfilling our own pleasure. And so they knocked at the door, and the rest, Jafar said to Zobeida, the rest you know, because we were here then. Well, one of the calendars then turned to Zobeida and said, Madam, mistress, I beg you, please, for our sake, spare the lives of these three men, and let us all go our way in gratitude for your company and for the wonderful food that you provided us and the merriment. Well, Zobeida, she quietly turned to all of the men and said, I spare all of your lives, and I do all of you this favor. And with that, the men were ushered out of the house. Now, Hassan al-Rashid turned to Jafar and, well, thanked him for all that he had done. He was a great spokesperson. And then he turned to the calendars and he said, my men, where will you be staying? Where are you going now? And the calendars said, we actually have no idea where we're going to be going. And the Caliph, Hassan al-Rashid, said, well, why don't you come stay at our place? And that way, at least for this night, you will be taken care of. And then he turned to Jafar and he said, Jafar, take them to your house and tend to them there. Give them a pleasant place to sleep for what's left of this night. And in the morning, he said, I want you to bring them to me so that we can chronicle their stories. But I also want you to come back here and bring the 3 ladies with you so that we might hear their stories and might understand the mystery of why this woman, Zobeida, brings out these dogs, beats them, and then laments and cries together with them afterwards. Well, the caliph went on his way to his own palace, Jafar, taking the calendars with him, and went to his own home. In the morning, Jafar awakened and briefly presented himself before the caliph. The caliph had not slept a wink. He'd been thinking about all that had taken place. He wondered about the beating of the 2 dogs, and he thought more about the calendars and how sons of kings had ended up in the state that they were in. So these thoughts had been run through his mind the entire night. And when Jafar came, he said, "Bring me the dervishes," which calendars are basically dervishes. "Bring me the women. I want to see them. Hurry!" And off Jafar went. It was not long before he returned with the 3 calendars and the 3 ladies as well. The calendars, and he sat beside him, and 3 chairs. The women, he had stand behind a curtain. Jafar then spoke to the women and said, he really spoke to, I guess, everyone in the company there, and said, "Do you know who is sitting in front of you right now? This is the 7th son of Harad Rashan, and the daughter or the son of," and then he named the mother that he was, that Hassan al-Rashad was the son of. And everybody knew that family and knew who the caliph was. And once this introduction had been given, Jafar then addressed Zobeida and said, "Now we wish to hear your story, and we wish to hear also why each night you beat these dogs and then lament over them, with them. Tell us the story, and tell it to us in truth, even if in telling it you would end up in a burning hell. Tell us your story, for the truth shall and will set you free." Well, Zobeida began her story. Her story starts out, well, she had 2 sisters, but it was not the 2 women that she shared her home with. They were 2 other women, both older than herself. Now, it's told that she lived separately from her 2 sisters with her father. And her 2 sisters lived and grew up with her mother. Now, her father also had 2 other daughters, and the 3 of them all lived together with their father until their father died. Then she came to live with her mother. So there were 5 girls living in that house until their mother died. Now, the 3 sisters received from the mother an inheritance. It's not large, but it was sufficient to provide for them for at least some time. The 3 sisters divided this up amongst themselves, and they lived together for quite some time until the oldest said, "I must seek a husband. This living together like this, it's not suiting me. I need to find a husband and live happily in that way. And so she sought. And when she found, of course, a dowry was to be provided. And the dowry was provided by the money that had been left to them. This taken, the husband of the eldest sister went on their way. They invested what money had come in and goods, and they took these goods off in hopes to trade them for a profit. Well, the second sister, she thought the same and took a portion of the money as well for a dowry, married a man, and basically the same story unfolded. The money that the dowry had provided, well, it was used to buy goods, and off the two of them went. Across the landscape, across the world to trade goods for profit. And Zobeida was left alone, living. She too bought goods and traded them, but she stayed at home. Now, years passed, and eventually, a not well-to-do beggar appeared at her doorstep. Well, Scheherazade, she stopped the story there, as we will as well. We'll find out tomorrow. What happens? Who is this beggar that came to her door? Okay, have a good rest of your day. Thanks for joining.